In the first decade of the 2000s, my life seemed to get busier and busier between the growing family and the organizations that I belonged to and all. And then, as I had said previously, my dad, after Mom died, would go around and live with different kids. And when he would come to my house, I would take him sometimes to the Waco's Harrison Center, which was where a group of seniors met, and he liked to play dominoes. And he took his harmonica with him always. And once when he'd played, he told the director that his daughters put on musical programs. And all of a sudden, I was asked to do that there in Waco. And so we did put on special programs for times that came for the seniors, like Mother's Day or Father's Day or Veterans Day and so forth. And we even made the paper in it once. Well, something else happened in early 2000s. Our baby sister Linda married a man named Tim Hester. And Tim's family owned a vacation home on the banks of the Frio River in South Texas. And so we began having family vacations there some. The whole Daniel family, Marvin and Annie Daniel family. The first one we had was in May, and it was good, except it was pretty cold because the river lived up to its name, with Frio meaning cold, and it had cold water springs that made the river run, and we got a little chilly, so we changed the times to August for our vacations. And we did this for many years and really enjoyed it. We would go and cook all together and play board games, dominoes, karaoke, of course float the river, and just have a good time all together. And that went on for several years. Also, in 2003, my grandson, Joseph Nicosia, graduated from high school. Joe was a great student and well-liked and very well-rounded. He played football. He was center on the starting team. And then halftime, he'd take off his jersey and put on his sousaphone, march with the band at halftime, and then put his uniform back on and play center again all through the game. And he did very well academically and actually gained a scholarship to Texas State in San Marcos. And my teacher sorority also gave him a scholarship that year. Mary Mabry, who was one of my ADK friends, had now retired, and she became president of the Retired Teachers Association, which was Waco and McLennan County, and she asked me to be her historian. So that was a 2-year job that I had to take pictures and do a scrapbook and newspaper articles and that sort of thing, and that kept me busy. And when she finished, my other ADK sister, Eleanor Raines, became president. And she asked me to be her program chairman for 2 years. And so I did that, and arranged the programs for each of the 2 years. And one of the things she said she wanted to do was to have a style show. So we set that for April of 2005. And I got some of the retired teachers to be the models. I went to a new Marketplace Mall that had just opened on Highway 6 and I-35 and got different stores to agree to let us use some of their clothes, which would give them advertising and would also give us different places to show in the style show. And in April in Waco, there was always a special thing. They had April on the Brazos, where they had people to come in for different craft shows and that sort of thing. So we picked the theme, April in Paris and on the Brazos. And that worked out very well for our style show. And we had music intertwined with showing the clothes. And some of the songs that we sang were April in Paris, Thank Heavens for Little Girls, and then something from Moulin Rouge. And my sister Gladys came down and helped out, and she was can-can dancer for that one. And it was very well received. And at the end of that year, then, I received a certificate from the state and national for my programs for retired teachers. I got another certificate in the year 2005, and that was for Stephen Ministry. This was presented by my church. For 1 year, I had been going on late Sunday afternoons for training and lessons of how to be a Stephen minister. And this is when people, lay people, would go and visit with some who were ill or facing death or maybe widows, had some kind of a problem, and we would sit and be a good friend, talk to them, and if they were needing special counseling, we could recommend that. But that helped me to know how to deal with people and not go through some of the things that I had gone through when I was a widow. I did do this, and over the years, I think I was able to help several people, some that even were not members of our church. Well, I got a certificate from the church for that, completion of my Stephen ministry. And at the end of April of that same year, 2005, got a call from Dwayne, my brother in Abilene, because Dad had been staying with him now for about 3 or 4 months. And he said Daddy was in the hospital. And that was the second time since he'd been there. And he needed some help because both he and his wife were still working. So I drove to Burleson and picked up Gladys, and we drove over to Abilene, stay at Dwayne's house, and go up to the hospital to help with Daddy. And one day when we were up there and Dwayne came in after work, we were all three there talking to Dad. A funny thing happened there in the hospital. This Oriental therapist came in and he said, "Mr. Daniel, time for your exercise." And my dad said, "Oh, I've got my family here. These are my daughters and my son. I don't want." He said, "No pain, no gain." And then he looked at us and he said, "Mr. Daniel, your father, he lived a long time. He have big ears." And we kind of smiled. He said, "Chinese say big ears mean long life. And he have big ears, he have long life." And so we kind of smiled and laughed. And he looked at Dwayne and he said, "Well, you have a little long life." He looked at my sister Gladys, who had small ears like my mother, and he said, "Oh, so sorry." And then he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you have big ears. You live a long time." Well, I guess that might have been true because I've now outlived my dad. Well, that was a fun thing, but the rest of the visit did not turn out to be so much fun because the test indicated that my daddy was in pretty bad health now, and the doctor said he can no longer go home. He needs to be in a full-time nursing facility where he gets 24/7 care. And he gave me the job to tell my dad. So when I talked to Daddy about it, I said, "Daddy, if you want to stay here," they said, "you can go up on the 5th floor of the hospital. It's a nursing facility up there, and Dwayne and Bobby will come as often as they can. Or if you want to go to Waco or Temple, I'll be there to see you every day. a nursing home in Waco, or Temple, where you have a couple of cousins living in a nursing home. You might like that, and I'll take care of you. Or the third choice is San Angelo, where you've always lived, and you have Andy and Bobby still there, and some grown grandchildren. And he said, well, if I can't go back to one of your houses, then take me to San Angelo, because if you don't take me now in an ambulance, you'll be taking me in a few weeks in a hearse. And so that was true. Daddy had done well before that. He actually, in 2004, had said to Dwayne, is anybody going to give Jenny a 70th birthday party? And Dwayne said, well, their kids probably will, or Gladys or somebody. Well, y'all need to do it because she's turning 70. And you know, I've known her longer than anybody. I guess that's true. He was my daddy. And he said, but you need to have it here in Abilene because I'm getting feeble and I'm not able to travel. So have the party here so I can attend it. And a 70th birthday for Jenny, which they did. And it was lots of fun. We had a good time. Then, this next year, by April, we took him to San Angelo after the doctor and got him in a nursing home. And he did live until the end of May. And at that time then, we had a funeral for him and put him away in a nice service. Us three daughters sang at his funeral. And we had a 6-piece brass band at the cemetery because my dad had been a bandmaster. And Marines who folded the flag and had come from Abilene to do that because they said with his World War II record, he deserved the Marine Corps because that's what he had been in. So that was another thing in 2005. Michelle, my niece in Pennsylvania, was not able to come. She was the daughter of my sister Renee and her husband Neil, who did come from Philadelphia for the funeral. But Michelle has a dance studio in Pottstown, and for a year she had reserved this place that was hard to get for her dance recital. And if she had to do that for all her students. So she sent word that she was so sorry she couldn't come to her grandpa's funeral, but she wanted to do something special for him. And so here's what she did. She researched and learned that no one had ever choreographed a ballet to Anton Dvorak's New World Symphony, which he wrote after visiting the United States in 1857. And so she took that on as her thing to do to honor my dad. And she did choreograph music to that and called it the New World Ballet. And it was put on 1 year after his death in 2006 as a memorial to him. And the world premiere was held in Pennsylvania. And my sister Gladys and I flew up there and stayed at Renee's for a week and went to the world premiere of the New World Ballet, choreographed by Michelle Wirtz, my niece. One of the things we did while we were in Philadelphia was Renee took us to eat at the Village Green, which was near Valley Forge, and a place where George Washington had his headquarters during the Revolutionary War. And it was now a restaurant and a place where you could go visit the house, what it looked like, and then have a nice meal there. And I think there's a picture of she and Gladys and I sitting in that, eating at that place. That was a wonderful tribute to my dad. My sister, Maureen, had developed breast cancer and had treatment some surgery and radiation, chemo and all, and she was pretty sick. And about that time, her husband Neil also began showing signs of Alzheimer's. So she was being treated, and Neil ended up going into a nursing facility. And when she got into remission, she would go to the nursing home and visit him, and she would visit with him and all the residents of that particular ward. And she even started a little jug band with them, where because they could music reverberated with them, and they could play shaking the bells or beating the sticks or shaking a rattle, little instruments like you might use in kindergarten with kids. And she took her ukulele and played, and they would sing old songs that they could remember. And they even got so good that they put on a Christmas program for the whole nursing home one year. And she did this, and because Neil was now in a nursing facility, she would come to Texas without him in the summers for the reunion. And she'd come and stay a little bit before, and then we'd go to the river. She called it an odyssey because we would travel different places. And she would say, "Where are we going on our odyssey this year?" Well, one year, I picked her up in Austin, and Gladys had come down from Burleson. And we stayed at my house one night to see all my kids. And then the next day, we drove to Abilene. And we stayed a night with Dwayne and Bobby there. And then the next morning, we got in the car and drove on to Canyon, which is just south of Amarillo, and a place where Paladura Canyon is. We got a hotel room there, and that night we drove it down into the canyon and went to the musical Texas, which is put on every summer with the Paladura Canyon as the background. It's an outdoor theater, and it tells the story of the Panhandle of Texas. It's a great musical and a worthwhile going to see. So after that, the next day, we visited a museum there and looked at all the things there about buggies and oil well construction and things that had made the Panhandle great. And then we drove on as far as Lubbock, arriving there at lunchtime, and had lunch with our niece, Tara Bearden, and got to see our brand new great-nephew, Elijah, who had just been born to Tara and Quint. That's Linda's daughter, Tara. From there, we drove on south to San Angelo, and we stayed at my brother Andy's house for a couple of days, visiting with them and seeing all their kids. And then we drove the next day on down to Concan to see Linda and get ready for the Daniel reunion. And Gladys said, "Jenny, you do realize we've been all the way from the Panhandle of Texas down nearly to the Rio Grande?" I said, "Yeah, I know, but we've had fun, haven't we?" And Maureen said, "Well, what an odyssey that was." And that's where she got that name. And after that, she would always ask where we were going. Well, one odyssey we took was to the hill country, and we went upriver. I think it was the Colorado, up to where the eagles' nests are, and got to see a bunch of bald eagles and the riverboat, and then on down and over to Fredericksburg for the German culture and food. And that was very interesting. We visited Admiral Nimitz Museum and had a good time there. And we went on to Luckenbach and down to Bastrop, and we even had our picture made in a saloon there as three ladies of the evening. that was a great time for Maureen as long as she was in remission. One other thing that I did that gave me lots of pleasure was I joined the Waco Utopian Music Club, which was a group of people who belong to the Texas Music Clubs and the National Music Club, and they do all kinds of music and give scholarships for music and that sort of thing. And music had been a part of my life always, and so I learned through that from a friend that I'd met in the Lorena Women's Club, Doris Stanford, and she invited me to join, which I did. And I soon was asked to put on one of those programs, and I directed it. And after that, they asked me to be program chairman, to be the person who did the different programs for every month, and I held that job for several years, which I enjoyed. One year, we actually won an award from the nation for our program that we did on veterans for November for Parade of American Music, and where we had veterans and first responders as guests and did all martial music and that sort of thing. That's been a great part of my life, and they just gave me an award for 50 years of sacred music, as I had been singing in the choir and playing handbells and all for over 50 years. And then 2007 came along, and something's very special happened in that year. In 07, my daughter Alicia married Stefan Green. He was a young man she had met at work. She was now working at the VA Temple, and he was also working there. He was an audio-visual expert and using skills he had learned in the Air Force, in the military. And they met at the hospital, and soon they dated and got married in a gazebo in Temple, Texas on the 7th of July of 2007. Stefan was from a small family. He didn't have a whole lot of relatives, but we broke him in that first year because Joseph graduated from college and Michael graduated from high school, both that same year. And so he had 2 graduations to go to. Then we took him to 2 family reunions, the Young reunion in San Angelo in July, and the Daniel reunion on the Rio Frio in August. And then my brother, Bobby, had a stroke on Thanksgiving Day of 2007, and his funeral was in 2007. He died after a month of trying to rehab in the hospital and died on Christmas Eve of that year. Gladys and I had been there helping to visit with him at the hospital and try to take care of him. But Jerry Babb came, his son, from Fort Worth where he worked, and he said, "You go on home for Christmas and I'll be here with Dad." And then he called us Christmas morning. His dad had died in the night. Well, we broke Stefan in right with 2 graduations, 2 reunions, and a funeral. He's been very gracious through all that and a good member of our family, and has used his skills as an audiovisual person to record this thing that I'm doing now, an oral thing about my life, and I thank him for that. So we had Dad's funeral in 2005. We had Bobby's in 2007. And in 2009, Gladys's granddaughter, Nikki Seeley, was killed in a car accident coming down the mountain in West Virginia after Thanksgiving at her other grandmother's house. And so that ended with 3 deaths again in those 10 years. I wonder what the next 10 years will bring.